$1 billion. That's the fine Europe just handed Google, and this one hits completely different. It's not about search results. It's not about privacy. It's about what Google allegedly did hidden from public view, systematically blocked competitors from accessing its own advertising network while hoarding the fastest speeds and best deals for itself. Imagine Google owns the world's biggest marketplace for buying and selling online ads. Its own advertising tools get premium placement, fastest delivery, best pricing. Meanwhile, every competitor trying to operate in that same marketplace gets throttled, gets delayed, gets treated like a second-class citizen. That's what regulators say Google did. The European Union's Digital Markets Act, think of it as Europe's rulebook for keeping tech giants from playing dirty, caught Google red-handed. This fine is just the opening move. More investigations are rolling in. Other big tech companies are watching nervously, knowing they are next. But here's what most tech coverage completely misses. This isn't really about the fine amount. It's about a fundamental power change happening right now. For the first time, a government is winning against big tech in real time, not years later in some appeals court, but while the violations are actively happening. And that fundamentally changes how these companies operate everywhere. For decades, big tech companies operated like they owned the internet. They set their own rules. They punished competitors who didn't play along. Governments mostly watched from the sidelines. Then Europe got tired of waiting. In 2022, the European Union passed the Digital Markets Act, a landmark law specifically designed to stop the biggest tech platforms from abusing their power. It's not a suggestion. It's a rulebook with teeth. Companies have to follow it or face massive penalties. Google isn't the first target, but it's the biggest test case so far. The company controls more than 80% of all search, which gives it extraordinary power over how information flows online. But it also has its fingers in advertising, video hosting, cloud services, maps, email. It touches almost everything. The problem isn't that Google succeeded, it's how Google allegedly succeeded. Regulators looked at the advertising network, called AdX, and found evidence Google wasn't just competing. It was allegedly using its dominance in search to push competitors out of the market entirely. This is the moment where big tech's free-for-all era ends. Europe is drawing a line in the sand, and other countries are watching to see if the rulebook actually sticks. To understand what Google did, you need to understand how online advertising actually works, and it's far more complicated than most people realize. When you visit a news website, that site doesn't sell ads directly to companies like Nike or Mercedes. Instead, it uses an intermediary, an ad network or exchange. Google's version is called Google AdX. These networks connect publishers who have space to sell with advertisers who want to buy it. Here's where it gets sketchy. Google owns AdX, the marketplace, but Google also owns advertisers who use that marketplace, its own ad platform called Google Ads, and it owns Google DV360, which is a tool that advertisers use to bid on those ads. So Google is the referee, the player, and the scoreboard all at once. Regulators found evidence that Google allegedly used that position to give its own products unfair advantages. Competitors' ads got slower delivery. They got worse data. They got squeezed out. It's like if you owned a sports league, your own team, and the referees, and you changed the rules whenever it helped you win. That's the core accusation. Google allegedly leveraged its dominance in other areas to crush competition in advertising, which is one of the most profitable businesses on the internet. This isn't abstract regulatory stuff. Real companies got hurt. Real people lost opportunities because of what Google allegedly did. Take a company like Criteo or The Trade Desk. These are legitimate ad tech firms competing against Google for the same business. They found that when they tried to compete on Google's AdX platform, they faced obstacles. Their data didn't flow as smoothly. Their bids didn't get processed as quickly. It wasn't that they couldn't compete. It was that the playing field was tilted against them from the start. Publishers, websites that need to sell ad space to survive, also got squeezed. They wanted access to as many buyers as possible to get the best prices, but if they wanted to use Google's ad products, they allegedly had to accept worse terms on the open marketplace. It's what lawyers call self-preferencing. Google using its own dominance to favor its own products. Smaller ad tech startups never even got a chance. Why compete against a company that owns the marketplace itself? That's not capitalism, that's a rigged game. Some competitors gave up entirely. Others got acquired by larger players just to survive. The European fine isn't just punishment. It's acknowledgement that this actually happened. And European regulators are saying, never again. Google isn't new to getting fined for antitrust behavior. The company has paid billions over the years for various violations. But this fine is different, not because of the amount, but because of what it represents. Back in 2018, Google paid $500 million for allegedly manipulating search results to favor its own services. That seemed huge at the time. Then came the privacy fines, $1 billion here, $1 billion there. Google paid $89 million to France for tracking cookies, $65 million to Spain for privacy violations. These fines hurt, but Google's revenues are so enormous that they barely register. But the Digital Markets Act fine is different because it's not just punishment for the past. It's enforcement of ongoing rules. Google now has to change how it operates, not just pay money, but restructure its business. That's way more disruptive than any fine. Meanwhile, other big tech companies are getting hit too. Meta got fined for Instagram and WhatsApp data transfers. Amazon got investigated for using seller data unfairly. Apple's App Store faces constant scrutiny. But here's the crucial thing. Europe's enforcement is getting faster and more aggressive. The old model where companies would wait 5 years for a ruling is gone. Europe is punishing violations while they are happening, forcing changes in real time. That's the real change. You might be wondering, why should I care about Google's advertising network problems? I don't work in ad tech. This sounds like corporate stuff. But here's the thing, this matters to you directly, even if you don't realize it. First, your data. Google's dominance in ads means Google collects data on you across huge parts of the internet. The more competitors Google crushes, the more concentrated that data collection becomes. Breaking up Google's control of ad networks actually gives you more privacy by default because your behavior gets tracked by multiple companies instead of just one. Second, your favorite websites. Newspapers, blogs, YouTube creators, podcasts, they all depend on advertising revenue to survive. When Google dominates advertising, it can dictate the prices it pays publishers. That means less money flowing to the creators you love. When there's real competition in ad tech, publishers get paid better rates, which means better content. Third, the internet itself stays diverse. If small companies can't compete in ad tech because Google owns the marketplace, they go out of business or get acquired. The web becomes more centralized, more controlled by the same few mega companies. Regulation forces competition, which means new startups can actually survive. This fine isn't just about punishing Google. It's about protecting the internet ecosystem itself. So what actually happens because of this fine? Google doesn't just pay the money and move on. Under the Digital Markets Act, Google now has specific requirements. It has to give competitors equal access to its platforms. It can't use data from one service to unfairly advantage another. It has to be transparent about how its algorithms work. These sound basic, but they are revolutionary for Google. In practice, this means Google's ad network has to operate more like a neutral marketplace. Competitors' ads get the same treatment as Google's own ads. Data doesn't flow in ways that favor Google's products. Publishers get clearer information about why their ads were rejected or accepted. Google also faces ongoing monitoring. European regulators aren't waiting 5 years for the next investigation. They are watching actively. If Google violates the rules again, the penalties get exponentially worse. The next fine could be 3 times bigger or even higher. But here's what Google probably won't do: completely restructure itself or break itself apart. The fine is large enough to force change, but not so large that it destroys the business model. Google's shareholders are frustrated, but the company survives. What you'll actually see is slower, but the internet becomes more open. Small ad tech companies can compete. Publishers have more options. And governments have proven they can actually hold big tech accountable. This moment matters more than just Google. This is where power changes. For 2 decades, big tech operated under the assumption that governments couldn't or wouldn't regulate them. The companies moved too fast. Regulators moved too slow. By the time anyone filed a complaint, the market had already changed. But Europe is proving that assumption was wrong. The Digital Markets Act exists. It has teeth. And it's actually being enforced against the most powerful technology companies in the world. That's terrifying for Google, Meta, Amazon, and Apple. It's also probably good for everyone else, users, competitors, the internet itself. What happens next depends on whether other countries follow Europe's lead. If America, China, and other nations adopt similar rules, big tech's days of unfettered dominance are truly over. If they don't, Europe becomes the standard that shapes global tech behavior anyway, because too many revenue streams depend on European compliance. Google will adapt, it'll restructure, it'll probably pay more fines, but the era where one company could own the entire marketplace and the referee and the scoreboard at the same time, that's closing. That's what you need to know. The internet's power structure just shifted. Stay across this story because it's only going to get bigger. Make sure you're following for daily AI news. We cover the stories that change how the internet works.